Hi guys, this is week 7 of video games and learning class. This week we're talking about representation in video games. This presentation was made by Jackson Bird, David Vigiano, Jordan Zhou, and Katrina Meyer. Representation in the world of video games. Video games, like the real world, does not equally represent many minority groups. Women, for example, are seen as worse players and are called out in game chats. Queers are also called out in video games by other gamers. Here's some stats about representation. Among all characters, male characters outnumber female characters in a 4-to-1 ratio. It's about 79.9% male characters compared to 20.1% female characters. Female characters are far more likely to be visually and verbally sexually objectified than male characters. While white characters outnumber characters of any color in a 3-to-1 ratio, this representation is less diverse than the US population, which consists of 38% people of color, but a notable improvement from the 20% of characters of color represented in the last decade. LGBTQ+ characters are virtually absent from video game representations. A whopping only 0.03% of characters were identified as LGBTQ+, far below the 4.5% of the US population who identify as LGBTQ+. Some strategies that people have come up with, or gamers, game companies have come up with, rehabilitate games by diversifying game makers. So hire more women, programmers of color, and obviously LGBTQ+ people in the industry. This way it battles the game industry, their way to produce racist, sexist, prejudiced games. And then the second one is the freedom not to be harassed while playing games. So if we can find strategies for that, be awesome. Some criticisms. The game is stacked against many of us, and life is already on the highest difficulty setting for queers, women, and people of color. Becoming the gamic model minority by outperforming others within the game is not going to change that. It amplifies a uniquely technocratic form of cruel optimism. The very idea of fairness seems to recede. So what has been done? There's been female protagonists. Games such as Tomb Raider and Half-Life Alyx are pushing forward and including female leads to better represent the female population in their games. The inclusion of LGBTQ+ characters and choices. Games such as Overwatch and Fallout include characters that are either part of the LGBTQ+ community or offer that player the choice of having a relationship with any gender they prefer. Here are questions come up with to have you guys brainstorm about. The first one, what are some strategies that you could come up with to help prevent racism, sexism, or bias towards LGBTQ+ groups in games? I think it's important to note that LGBTQ+ really hasn't had a looked into deep in the game industry yet, so some good strategies for that one specifically, but in general too, as other prejudice against gaming groups. The second question, share your experience if you ever had encountered any bias towards you or witnessed any bias towards others in your group that you're gaming with. How did you handle that situation? Maybe compare, contrast with Here's answers, because the same situation might have been viewed different from both sides, you know? And the third one, provide an example of a game that you believe unintentionally discriminates against a particular group. How does this design choice, how can that be improved to promote inclusivity? So, thanks for listening, you guys. Have a great week.